baked with nipples on top.
Hello, it's Vatgun. Today I'm going to be looking at controversial topics over the past month about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure on the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure subreddit. So let's get started. I believe Part 8 has 21 volumes so far, so I'm wondering if it's showing any signs of ending. I've been meaning to read it, but I've been wanting to do so after it was over. Well, mate, I'm a firm believer of not worrying about whether or not a show is finished for you to start watching it. JoJolion is really good and really enjoyable, so I highly suggest you hop on the bandwagon as soon as you can because you are missing out. The next post is, if Yoshikage Kira just wants a quiet and peaceful life, why does he have a stand with the ability to create bombs, which, if you don't know, is like the exact opposite of the words peaceful and quiet. This is actually a really good point, and I don't really have anything to say to this. So I know how Jotaro's hat works in Part 3 and 6, but Part 6, his hat seems to be part of his hair, like it's merged or something. Please explain. I don't think Jotaro's hat has ever worked. Maybe in Part 6. It doesn't really merge in Part 6, he properly wears the hat. But as far as Part 3 and Part 4 is confirmed, he's always had his hat merged with his hair. So, don't know what you want to debate, mate. Really fucking good idea. I feel as though I may be the only one who thinks this way, but for me, Part 2 of JoJo is the best one. I found all of the parts to be somewhat disappointing and only good at the end. My most hated part is Part 4 because of the style and story. I'm not a fan of the characters, especially Koichi. I feel that Part 1 is meh, Part 2 is basically perfection. Part 3 is okay/good, but only after they get to the Dio arc and a few times before it. Part 4 was trash and Part 5 was good. What are your thoughts on all the other parts? This isn't actually a very unpopular opinion. I do know some people who enjoy Part 2 the most. I can see where this guy's coming from, because the whole of Part 2 just screams crazy action and wacky story, right, from the beginning to the end. And it delivers that very well. I think that's why Part 2 is really enjoyable. Part 2 doesn't have to worry about writing out a legacy. Part 1 writes out the legacy of JoJo. So all Part 2 has to do is pick up the mantle and just tell its own story, which is exactly what it does, and which is exactly why it's so enjoyable. As for his other opinions, such as hating Part 4, and hating Koichi, thinking Part 1 is meh, Part 3 is good okay, is actually very similar to my opinions as well. However, the difference is I love Part 4. Part 4 is amazing, but I can see why he calls Part 4 trash. Part 4 does have a lot of plot holes, one of the few parts in JoJo that has a lot of literary flaws, in my opinion. And Part 3 is also okay good in my books as well, but I believe that this person has a very constructive review of JoJo. And, it just goes to show that everyone's favourite part and everyone's least favourite part is different. Why did Araki choose specifically to set Stone... Jesus Christ, it's hard to read. Why did Araki specifically choose to set Stone Ocean out of all places in Florida? Why Florida? That is a very good question. He could have literally chosen any other part of America. But in my mind, he chose Florida because, well, Florida is in American culture, is known as the very bizarre and crazy place in all of America, right? And the story that happens to take place in Florida is called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 6 Stone Ocean. JoJo is known for its bizarre and crazy stories. So setting a bizarre and crazy story in a bizarre and crazy setting just makes too much sense. Obviously, I don't know if Araki was consciously aware of this, but consciously or not, it certainly works, in my opinion. I was recently thinking about Part 1, and two things didn't make sense to me. The first was, why did Jonathan's mother have the stone mask with her? And the second was, why was Jonathan a Hamon prodigy? Now, we know that if your predecessors are skilled at Hamon, their progenitors, Jesus Christ, will be as well. Such as Joseph being able to use Hamon naturally, despite the fact that he never trained. So thinking back, I wondered if the two were connected. We know George had no knowledge, no information about Hamon, but we know next to nothing about Jonathan's mother, save for that the stone mask belonged to her. Is an extra branch splitting off? What if another plot point that was possibly forgotten by Araki was that the carriage crash that killed Jonathan's mother was not actually an accident, but an attack by vampires in order to kill a Hamon user and retrieve the mask? Now this, from the get-go, I think that this theory is a huge stretch. However, this is a very perceptive theory. It's a very perceptive theory, and it's perceptive to the point where you could even write this into the story somehow, and it would work, in my opinion. But several things that cancel out this theory is that, one, when Phantom Blood was written, female characters didn't really have a place in manga, like they didn't really have important roles. In the context of when Phantom Blood was written, it would have been ridiculous if a female character in a manga had such an important role such as that. So that's one point. And the other is that there's absolutely no evidence linking to this theory. If this person believes that this theory is true, then it's not, because the Stone Mask and the Legacy of Hamon was very specifically written something that he learns at some point during his life, not something that was passed down to him from relatives. That was explicitly and implicitly told throughout the story. But yes, this is an interesting theory though, and I do like it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a little bit different from what I usually do, but I just felt like talking about JoJo for a little bit, and I did for about 5 or 6 minutes, so hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.